Good evening, good evening, and welcome. Welcome to the very first Wisdom Wednesday based on the Kingdom Mentoring platform. I'm Brother Paul, otherwise known as the Digital Shepherd, and I'm super delighted to tell you guys that I've got a senior VIP member of the establishment in the house. I don't know how we did it. I think we spent all our budget, but we've actually got an Archbishop Doye in the house. I'm going to just I'm just going to bless the house with this little jingles before I get the man of God to speak to you. So hopefully everything will work out. As I say, this is our very first edition of this How Do I series, and we'll have to see if it all works. Let's have a go here. Yes, absolutely. Round of applause. There's some people here from the Pentecostal church. We like it a little bit lively. Anyway, good evening, sir. Welcome to the Kingdom Mentoring platform. Welcome to the How Do I series. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you, Paul, for having me. I'm delighted to be here with the Digital Shepherd.
Digital Shepherd, the otherwise known as it. I've got so many names. Some people say, "Oh, that's the Kingdom Mentor over there." Some people call me the Digital Shepherd in my church. Let me know that I'm just Brother Paul, the door usher. So take your choice. But yeah, super delighted that you're here for the very first show. I can't think of anybody more apt to bless this show, and we're going to have a discussion for the people. Now, can you remember what the question is? The show is called How Do I? And the guests finish the sentence, and then that becomes a discussion. So can you remember, sir, what we agreed was going to be today's topic? How do I
Transform my church digitally.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. Full marks. So how do we digitally transform the church, transform my church digitally? I'll take any flavor of that. And that is a tough question, sir, because I think I've been living and breathing that task for the last year or so. That's a very tough question. So for those who don't know this esteemed gentleman who has a habit of writing books, his latest book, is out, and it actually deals with the topic of digital transformation, not specific to the church, but it's about frameworks and methodologies and processes. He has it there. Absolutely. I haven't yet. I have to confess, I haven't yet got my copy. But the best I can do is show the viewers, or maybe they saw it themselves when you held it up. But let's just see. So here we go. Secrets of Digital Transformation. A handbook. A handbook. So, it's a practical guide for church leaders. Absolutely. And it's so apt in today's time that you should come out with that. And we're going to explore that hopefully today. And I have to say, I've decided to do no research on you. It's no research on you, because when I had a look at your LinkedIn profile, sir, you had more letters before and after your name than I have in my name, in my whole family. It's like, where do I start? And we have an incredible man in the house, and God has blessed you. Absolutely. I think you told me
Amen.
that you've created well over 20 books, and it doesn't look like you're going to stop anytime soon. So I'm super
No,
delighted that you've hit on that topic. Would you like to just introduce the book to us, really, as to why you thought you'd come out with that and why it's so relevant today?
okay, well, one of my missions in life is to see that leaders, particularly leaders who do not come from a technical background, are able to understand technology better. able to therefore take the decisions that will bring value to them and the people that they serve. And so I have these series of books that I have created, which I think will help with that. So if you're listening in, watching today, or when this is played back, please do get yourself a copy. It's on a platform called the Great British Bookshop. And if you go online, you can find it there. It's less than 20 quid and it will bless you. It will bless you. It takes you step by step from the very basics of what do we mean when we're talking about digital, all the way through to how you can implement sophisticated systems like artificial intelligence in what you do.
Right. Now that's a tough claim. If that book, that handbook, can guide someone through those type of right up to AI, which is very current at the moment, that's a book that you're tempting me to read that book. You know, I have to confess. I have to confess.
I think you
Did you say
should, Paul. You're a digital shepherd after
did you,
all. I mean, if
manuals?
if the digital shepherd doesn't read this book, then who's going to read it? Come on now.
If it was called a technical manual or specification or something like that, I'm all over it. But I have to confess that, I haven't read 26 books that do not come under the heading of technical or spiritual. I have to confess that,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
yeah,
But you know what? We've come to a time in the world now where we have to bridge the gap between leaders who are technical and the ones who are not.
yes.
Because every organization now is becoming a digital organization, whether they like it or not.
Oh,
And I think for those of us like you and me who've come up with a pretty technical sort of background, it's part of our remit now to open up this knowledge so that the leaders who didn't come from that background can access it and we can then work together. I find a lot of the places I've been that leaders have a little bit of difficulty in conversations with technical people.
oh,
And that's putting it mildly. And so I think it's time for us to begin to cross that bridge and end that
absolutely.
divide.
Absolutely. Hallelujah. The two most common statements I get when I talk to a pastor or a church leader is A, I'm not technical, or B, I'm not running a business. I'm not running a business, I'm running a church. Like, most of the things I say come under one of those two headings. And that seems to be their go-to solution to get out of the conversation and walk to the other side of the room. I'm not technical. And if I say something, and the ones that do stay and I challenge them, they just, well, sir, we have to put it to prayer. We have to put it to prayer. And I've yet to find a way to get action, to get
Well,
action.
prayer works. Prayer works.
But you have to
In
open your.
technical things. Let me tell you a story.
Okay.
I used to work as an engineer in the marine telecommunications field, and I'd get dropped off by a helicopter or by a boat on an offshore vessel, maybe a deep sea vessel or an offshore platform, and there'd be something for me to fix. And they got to know me after a while. They used to call me the Rev, and when I arrived, there'd be a shout go up, say, "Mind your language, boys, the Rev's on board." It kind of helped. It didn't. They tried, but you can understand. And when they show me the equipment, I would pray, and I'd have people ask me, say, "What are you doing?" I say, "I'm talking to the chief engineer," because I believe that technology is only possible because of how God has created humanity. Is part of the gift. And I sincerely believe that when you get to heaven, there will be a digital dashboard there like you have never seen in your life. You will see technology there that is able to represent and represent from before eternity to before what we call time until after what we call time no longer exists. You see
Hallelujah.
everything before you. So, okay, come on, men and women of God, if you're listening, you need to get with your technology and stop thinking that you do not have a gift within you to be able to use it for the glory of God.
Amen. 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 You know what? That is an amazing vision you have there. So I hope that I can enjoy that vision with you at some point. But let me tell you what my findings are so far on the church, and then maybe you can give me your views on it. So you touched on church leaders getting an understanding of technology and treating it as an opportunity, something that presents an opportunity for them as opposed to a burden or something that is for the next generation. That's not for me, that's for the younger folk. Now, I have some power slides, and I've tried various ways to get them to understand my findings. And the first thing that I found is the church leadership do not engage the term CTO or CIO or even a digital trustee. You're not getting on the church board.
Yeah.
In fact, if you have technical skills, you're disqualified from even representing. And there's no other industry. I'm fairly confident in saying no other sector
Yeah.
does not understand the importance of having either a CTO, a CIO, or a digital trustee, or someone who understands the current landscape to guide the board. Now, what's your thoughts on that, sir? Am I right to say that that's the starting point?
It's not just a church thing. It's very deeply embedded in society.
Okay.
Modern society now consists of the people who know about technology and are comfortable with it, and those who are not.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the process of training for ministry does not include things like that. So I think that's where the problem really is. And I've done a lot of training of clergy over the last 20, 25, almost 30 years. And one of the things I've tried to do is introduce these questions at that stage before people get into the responsibility of running ministry. They have a chance to have those conversations in a safe space with people present who know what they're talking about. I think this prepares them a lot better, so that they're no different from people who have come to manage a company who are also very remote from technology. And there are plenty of those about,
Right.
just that they come under greater pressure commercially to take certain decisions. So I think it's a wider problem, and it's something that we need to really begin to contribute to solutions to, which is what you're doing here.
Right. Well, okay. Well, I come from a corporate background, but mainly banking, finance. I've pretty much only ever worked for billionaire companies. So in terms of
Well,
technology, in terms of budget,
yeah,
and in terms of being ahead of the game, that's what they're all about. I've gone to the total opposite, like gone from people who can't live in the current, they have to live in the future, to people who only live in the past. I feel sometimes when
yeah.
I go to church on a Sunday, I'm in a time machine going from the future back to how the world was.
Yeah.
It's just a challenging time for me. Okay, so there's the organizational side of church that I think needs attention, and I think there's plenty of people with expertise that can advise them about how technology can be used to data. A lot of decisions these days are made as a result of the data that's generated in an organization that has digital processes. But I then tried to convince them that what I actually see in churches is impressive in terms of their technology that is physically there. They don't seem to be wanting for computers and the latest AV equipment. The sound is always on point. They like their toys, right? But I
Yes,
said
they
to them,
do.
look, if I bought a helicopter, that doesn't make me a pilot. I have to invest in the training. Otherwise, that vehicle is not going to get off the ground. So I'm happy to say I don't see a problem with the hardware layer, but you haven't got the knowledge to operate it. It's a helicopter that you can't fly. And they're looking at me like, well, surely I just turn it on. No, it's not that simple. You need to educate yourself into how to use the technology, and more importantly, how to transform your processes to get the benefit of that investment. And that's, for me, is where the problem lies. Is like, I don't think it's a technology problem in terms of, they're not shy of buying it, but they don't think they need to educate themselves in how to use it. What's your thoughts on that, sir?
Okay, there's a couple of things in the mix there that we can perhaps parse and pick out. One is that it's always a mindset problem.
Oh, yes.
It is always a mindset problem, and linked to that, it's always a strategy problem. So that even when I talk about, capacity and justification, because they may have a capacity, but they haven't found a justification for thinking of that capacity in certain ways. But the Lord speaks to us in Matthew 10:16, and he says, "Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves," telling us that we have a lot of capacity that we don't realize. We have a lot of capacity to do harm and a lot of capacity to do good that we haven't yet even begun to dig into. So what's the value, the link between our value and our purpose? Because the purpose for which we use the technology is what creates value out of the technology. And so we need to begin to understand that we can get much greater value from that technology that is linked to our purpose. And we could say that, in fact, what we do with the technology is what makes it whatever it is. So, a musical instrument is a symbol of music, but it's just a symbol until somebody with the gift, with the training, picks it up, and then it becomes this wonderful tool of expression, of communication, and all of that. So I think that we need to begin to talk about the value, not talk them into a decision, but presenting them with some options to say, we could do this. We could, for example, with artificial intelligence, if you fed all of the data about your neighborhood, all of the different statistics and the reports that have been written by various departments and whoever, and then you start to ask some questions, it will tell you basically where you need to put your finger on in that community. It will give you a range of options and insights. The decisions are still yours, but it does some heavy lifting for you. So sometimes it's just because we haven't spoken to these leaders in a language. I just use community outreach as an example. We've not spoken to them sometimes in a language that they understand. The reason the bank and the finance corporations are up there with that tech is because they know what it does for them. I mean, I used to teach the SWIFT system to bankers,
Yeah,
for
I'm familiar
example.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's always about the value. It's the value that changes the mindset, and it's the value that changes the strategy.
Mm. Okay, value. All right, let's zoom in on that. So, and when you say strategy, are you talking the overall strategy, or are we narrowing it down to a digital strategy?
No, that's another problem, is whenever we separate a digital strategy from the overall strategy, then
Yes.
there is a problem, because the digital decisions we take about the digital equipment or policy or process will not link up with the overall
For
strategy.
one, yeah.
So it's always better to have that built in to the overall strategy, for leaders to be able to see what they do with digital equipment as part of their overall strategy.
Yeah.
And that will mean that they will commit funds to it. They will commit to training people, including
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
and they will have an outcome or outcomes that they can measure it by.
Okay. All right. So you wouldn't believe the different ways that I have gone about this. Now, so you talk about value, and so I guess, my okay. So in terms of value, I think when I talk about digital ministry, right? So I'm saying, well, I'm going to plant a digital ministry in every UK church. That was one of our overall objectives, right?
Right.
And and most people would nod in appreciation of what I'm trying to do and how it's relevant. They weren't adverse to that objective. And I break down digital ministry to tele, well, communications and evangelism. So when you talk about, and So comms, evangelism, and technology. But technology, hardware-wise, they weren't in too bad a shape. Communications, they were bad. And evangelism is a door-to-door activity, not a digital activity as far as a traditional conventional church is concerned. So in terms of value, I've tried to convince them, look, I can run a campaign that could potentially reach 5.5 billion people. Like, and you're going door to door. I'll race you any day. I'll race you any day that I'm going to get there before you. So in terms of value, I'm saying, just imagine the amount, that in one hit, you can fulfill our purpose in the whole of building a church. Our whole mission can be fulfilled in one hit. So in terms of
Okay.
value, that's how I've approached it.
I think there's a problem there because you're kind of telling them they're doing it wrong. How about if
I
it's
offer it as an
if it's
alternative. I'm not saying
no, no,
migrate to
no,
it. I'm
no,
saying
no, no. It's
there's
not
more
an
than one way.
alternative. It's complementary.
I agree. I love that
It's
word. I love that word. It's
complementary.
complementary.
It's
Yeah.
complementary. You still do the door to door and the things you do, boots on the ground, because that
Yes.
is human to human.
Yes.
But here are some tools that will complement that, that will amplify that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so that it becomes a bigger thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
when you do go out on the streets, you can refer people to that, because the people that you're meeting on the street, most of them are digital people anyway.
Of course.
So you can talk to them about the digital side of your ministry, how they can connect with you and all of that.
Yeah.
So you weave them in together. I think it might be perhaps a little easier for quite a few leaders to get it first and to accept it second.
Yes. So yes, no, I don't advocate, getting rid of the old and bringing in the new,
But you kind of,
it's
sort of
all
a way.
it's the way it came out, and I was duly corrected. But yeah, no, it's like I try and say that, particularly on a digital platform, there's very, you've written a book, for example. That's one way that you can evangelize, traditionally or even digitally. We have podcasts, we have, webinars, we have social media and email, and, and I'm saying that whatever your skill set is, whatever whatever you feel comfortable with, then that's how you should evangelize. That's how you're going to be most effective. And if you think that the verbal route is where, and the personal route is more beneficial for you, then fine. I've got no problem with that. I just want people to understand that you have other options that you can do in addition to, and you would be surprised that you're going to find something. If you're creative, content creation, you're going to find something that you can use to evangelize with, to reach more people than you could do by traditional means. And as I say, the rewards, the potential rewards and value you can get by looking, at that are phenomenal. The person who cracks that is really going to be a hero. But I also try to get them to appreciate the risks, really. So the benefits, if you're looking at online evangelism, are quite clear, but the risks of being on digital aren't fully understood by church leaders. So we're
Oh,
now
yes.
talking about cybersecurity. We're now talking about GDPR. And when I ask church leaders, everybody's heard of GDPR. And you ask anybody, are you compliant with GDPR? What they hear is, am I deliberately non-compliant with GDPR? Which is not what I'm asking them. I'm saying, are you compliant? But because they're not deliberately breaking the law or breaking any regulation, they always say, I'm good. And I say, so, and then I throw a few acronyms at them, and well, I've never heard of that. And I say, well, that's all part of GDPR, sir. And they're quite surprised. And then I tell them what the standard penalty is, a 7-figure sum if you get that wrong, and believe you me, I have done a survey and I'm horrified by what my findings are. And it's not deliberate. It's just they are not educated in what it entails. They just know what the acronym stands for, and that's pretty much it.
Well, it's
And I've
not really
tried
their
that.
fault. I mean, I don't want to be, I'm a church leader too, I'm retired, but I don't want to be sort of bashing them with a baseball
Yes.
bat. It's not
Yes.
really their fault. Most of them, that is the world in which they have grown up in
Grown up
church.
in. Yes.
And I would say we need to perhaps lay a bit of emphasis on the training colleges, the places where the
Your
pastors of
Spurgeons and
tomorrow are
yeah.
being trained,
Yes.
because that is the place really where all of this ought to have been addressed. And it's not only about digital, there's many, many aspects of church leadership, church management that have kind of slipped past the theological colleges and the departments of theology in the universities. Until quite recently, most of them were still preparing missionaries for the 18th and 19th century. You know, yeah, it's true. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they hadn't thought about um, how you needed to evolve all of that for the modern age.
Yeah.
And so that's somewhere where someone like you can be of great help. And you could also perhaps think about running workshops for the teams in the church so they would be better equipped to give advice and give options to those, lead them in service in that particular church. Things like that, I think, would go a long way. But
Would go a long way.
I
Okay.
always find with leaders is find out what boxes they need ticked and help them tick those boxes.
Wow. Okay. So growth seems to be a common, if you are, what are you trying to do, sir? And they will always say, well, I'm trying to grow. I was saying, well, you've come to the right man, because I can tell you how you can grow exponentially. You know, of course, they're
Yes,
talking about traditional growth, but I said, you know what, if you allow me, sir, I can tell you how you can grow exponentially. We're going to have to, you know, find a way to accommodate all these people. But
exactly, absolutely. But then they might be thinking about growth, as you've hinted, in a slightly different way from you.
absolutely,
And
yeah.
so are you really ticking the box for them? Or are you trying to create a new box for them that needs to be ticked? And so I think maybe that's something that we need to find a way to creatively have the right kind of conversation about so that people can understand the value of what you're bringing. Because if they don't
Yeah, you love
understand
that
the
word,
value,
value. Yeah,
and value is in their own perception. Value is always in the perception of the customer, of the client, of the
yeah,
person whom you're bringing things to. I mean,
right.
why do people pay, £250,000 or £500,000 for a car, when, a bicycle would get them to where they need to go? It's
Yes,
their perception of value.
value. Well, as I say, my translation of that word in their words is growth. So I'm pretty confident that most church leaders would say, yeah, we're trying to grow, or we're trying to
Yes,
keep
but why?
keep afloat.
Why are they, when I was
Well,
doing
they see
the
that as part of the
postgraduate in
mission. I mean,
business,
isn't that why, Jesus said go out and make disciples? It's part of it.
yes, but what's the why for them? What's driving the driver?
Mm,
So in business you have drivers, right?
yes.
You have things that drive processes.
Mhm.
But I was taught in business school to always look beyond, to say what's driving the driver.
Right.
And for that particular leader, they may have some targets that they are trying to hit for particular reasons. It could be a whole range of things. It could even be their own ego. I mean, everybody's got one, but if you're going to enter into their world, then you're going to have to do like Jesus, who comes into our world as one of us, okay, and speaks our language and translates everything into parables and stories that we can understand,
My days.
you see,
Listen,
because if he had come just, in a cloud of glory, with trumpets blazing and, but then you see that he speaks to everybody at their level.
at their
The
level,
way
yeah.
he talks to Nicodemus.
Yeah.
Nicodemus is a big guy in the city, in the country. He studied theology and philosophy, and Jesus speaks to him at that level.
Yeah.
But when he meets with blind Bartimaeus or the woman at the well, he talks to everybody, in the language that they understand
That they understand.
and that meets them at the point
Now
of their need.
I cottoned on to that as well. So as I say, I originally started off um, marketing this campaign from a digital ministry perspective, and not so much the mentoring, where I've turned it totally around now and saying, you know what, at the heart of this solution is mentoring. And you wouldn't believe the different dimensions that we've got. Education is part of this. So mentoring is an extension of the education system. And I've formed partnerships with universities. We're providing, part of my solution involves providing mentors to universities, because one of the stats that bothered me when I was doing my research is like we lose up to 88% of our students from church to university do not return back to church. They do not return back to church. And when I
That's
ask
right.
church leaders, are you aware of that and what you're doing about it? A, they're not aware of it, and B, it's solution A again. And so I says, no, I'm going to have to do something about this. And so, me forming relationships with universities and following those students into university. In other words, we will be providing mentors that serve on university mentoring programs. We will be providing opportunities for placements of those students in industry. We're following them, right? So there's no break. We're bringing the church into university, and that's one of the things that I'm really enthusiastic about, because universities have been very open to this. Of course, it's a win-win for everybody, really. But also the students that I've spoken to, they're delighted that we are educating them, helping them through uni and beyond. Getting a job is probably the biggest obstacle we have, and it's the biggest surprise they get when they walk around with this degree that is really just a level playing field as far as an employer is concerned. It doesn't get you into the job. It just doesn't reject you from being one of the candidates. And they're very surprised when I tell them how many hoops they need to jump through. So, but anyway, that's one of the things that we're doing as part of this, is forming relationships, providing mentoring to the church, mentoring to church believers, mentoring to business owners in church, and showing how everybody can work together to make a difference from church and in the community. You'd be surprised how much is all geared around mentoring. But so I'm happy that I can educate. I'm happy that I can provide the resources, the knowledge, and to a degree the wisdom. And in terms of speaking to them in their language, the whole thing stems back to Proverbs, right? It's quite fascinating that you very rarely get a preacher preach on Proverbs. They take Proverbs out and sprinkle it on the other themes that they decorate it, their talk, but they won't just go straight to Proverbs, which is a very simple-ish, 500 and odd one-liners that are very easy to understand, and there's very little context that you need to appreciate. And so it's not enough for them. It doesn't tell a story, and so they just leave it. Whereas I couldn't understand the Bible until I read Proverbs. Because I couldn't find myself. I consider myself to be a mentor. I couldn't see myself in the Bible. And so I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know how to read it. And once I got comfortable with Proverbs, everything else started to make sense. So I have tried to speak in their language, and so far they've been receptive to my approach. So they do like the fact that I can now quote Proverbs in almost every situation. But I do think it's an underused book, and it's my favorite book by far. It's my favorite book by far. And I think, Solomon and Jesus being the ultimate mentor, I think that is not fully appreciated by your peers. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I totally changed my approach with the
Okay,
platform
well,
with regards to
your
that.
mentoring project is an amazing project, and I'm really blessed to hear about it. You've spoken to me a bit about it before, and I think it's going to go on to do even greater things. But I would say that you need to go back into it and ask the Lord what He's saying to you as to how you can use that as a platform for some of these other things that you're talking about, because with inside the success and the wisdom that God has given you
Yeah.
in that sphere could be some of the keys for you to be able to reach some of the other people that you're trying to reach with other aspects of your ministry, including the digital.
Okay. All right. Now, all right. You know what? Let's flip the script. So imagine you're speaking to a church leader now, and you have your book, your digital transformation book, and what would you be saying to me as to why I should buy your book and how that book would help me transform my church? So I'm non-technical, and you're trying to sell me your book, and you're trying to convince me to engage in the secrets of your digital transformation. Go ahead, sir.
Well, there's a few things. I mean, I wouldn't be confronting them with anything, but I would have a conversation. And what I do with senior leaders is I don't try to make them ever feel that they're being taught or that they're being corrected. I just have a conversation. We chat and we chat about things. And one of the things that I think is a big problem for any organization, and I wouldn't just be speaking to them as church, but for any organization, any leader of any organization, is something that you mentioned at the top of this conversation. That is the different digital experience that people have in their personal life and often in the place where they go to work and when they go to church, for example. And so if you think about it, when they're at home and they go on the commercial websites and they're booking a holiday in Lanzarote or wherever it is they go to holiday, everything flows seamlessly and it's addressing their need. When they come to work, maybe in the local council or in the church, it's a completely different experience. It's a different world. And as a leader, as a shepherd, you want to be thinking about how do you make them feel at home digitally. So your website, what's the online experience that people have? How does that help them to feel that they are part of you when they are away from you? Why is it that, younger people struggle sometimes when they go away to university, and that I think that's part of the problem actually, because they enter into a world that caters to their digital self that they have grown up with. And therefore they become open to messages and inclinations that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise. So it's more from that kind of viewpoint that it's therefore part of our responsibility to understand that. And it's a matter of justice as well, because we are meant to be addressing injustice. And there is a lot of digital injustice, and it reflects in the church that there are certain people or groups of people who have maximum access to the digital world, to the devices. And church should be a level playing field. It should be a place where we need to be community together. So the point there is, even if we're going digital, why are we going digital and how do we go digital without leaving a lot of our maybe older members or members who are less well off behind? And these may be some of the things that sometimes are at the back of the minds of some of the people that you're speaking with. And so digital solutions for church are not quite the same as rolling out digital for a large corporation or for a bank, for example.
Yeah.
It's got to be still got to be a sense of community.
Yeah.
And I've heard of churches that have gone as far as buying up laptops and distributing them
Yeah.
to families, particularly with younger children who perhaps don't have the means. These are some of the kinds of digital transformation issues that a church leader would probably find closer to their heart. But
Okay.
if we're simply talking about, let's just automate all of the jobs in the church, so you don't need any of the volunteers anymore. Well, what does that do for community?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we'll be talking more about how technology can help complement what these people are doing.
Yes.
And I mentioned some things before. So the approach needs to be, again, you asked what is value for
Yeah.
them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think the fact that we need to remember that the digital technology needs to come in to increase our ability to be community, to be one in Christ wherever we are.
Yes.
And so that the people who are part of your flock, wherever they are, wherever they go in the world, they are still part of you. They
Yeah. Yeah.
still
Yeah.
connect with you as much as when they're there in person. And then these issues of accessibility and justice and what we can do to help the less able among us
Yes.
and be very inclusive,
Yes.
and have people involved. There are young people younger people and people like yourself in the church who, if we got them together to help us design what would be the ultimate kind of digital expression of this church, which would cut across, yes, the use of digital technology in the service, but also a whole range of other things. Think about the health needs of older people. Could the church not be a provider of devices that help monitor and alert maybe their family if they had a fall or something? All of these are part of digital technology,
Yes.
which could be a blessing to us as a church community. So for me, it's not simply about let's go out and spend some money and buy the latest technology. It's got to be in line with who we are. I talk about faithful innovation, technology that flows from our faith, not out of our fear of being left out,
Yes.
but as an expression of the ministry and to the glory of God.
Yeah. No, I think you've touched on too many points there for me to respond to. But yeah, in terms of, yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Value and community value, are going to be close to their heart. So we actually do as you suggested. So we churchgoers does have a program that we launched last week whereby mobiles, tablets, and computer laptops will be a courtesy of tech firms and the university alliances, etc. We will be handing those out to those in need. We
Yes.
will be training people online and in person where possible, particularly those demographics that are not digital native, shall we
Yeah,
say?
yeah, yeah. So the question is, how does that fit into a strategy of a church? And
Yes,
can you allow the leader of the church to be seen to be the one who is kind of driving that,
yes,
even though they don't have to do the nuts and bolts, and so that they are also reassured that it is part of the mission and
yes,
part of the ministry?
yeah. And yeah, that's work in progress, shall we say? That is work in progress. I think the biggest challenge. So I think they get the communities up because the way I see it is, I'm not a collar. I'm not building a church or a movement. I'm trying to help the community and from church into the community. And so I said, look, I'm not. Here's the institution, but within the scope of church, you have community church and say spiritual church. And and I'm saying food banks and soup kitchens and all that. I class that as community church, right? So I'm saying that I can expand that. So I'm saying that, you know what? I can add training to that. I can add mentoring to that, which are all community activities, which indirectly are going to help you to grow, right? Indirectly, is going to give you opportunities to evangelize. And to be honest with you, I've had very good reception that, yeah, we're happy to hear
Yeah,
you're
you
not
are, you
trying to
see.
run
So
a
what are
church.
you complaining about then?
Here's what I'm complaining about. Well, here are my observations. Here are my observations. The church is almost everybody in church is part-time, and some of them are unpaid. So they simply do not have the time or the resources to do anything other than what they did the previous week. They just don't have the appetite to change.
You can do a webinar once a quarter. You can have the leaders allow you in when they have their celebration week or something, to have a little stand somewhere where people can come up and pick up a leaflet or something, and they can then join in something that fits in with their schedule. But in all of this, you're going to have to, I keep coming back to what is the value for the church and for the leaders of the church.
Yeah.
Because if you can't join up those dots for them, it's all very well you went round to the food bank and did something there. But if you can't join up the dots for them so that they can see it from where they sit, then they're not going to get it. And therefore, you can't get them to really be behind you in the way that you need. So I'm not saying it's going to happen like magic, but it's a kind of a process of unfolding to them what the potentials are and why this is good for them. And that might mean also, my dear brother, that you're going to have to, some of these silos between community church and this one and that one and the other, some of those barriers are going to have to break down, because it's actually one thing. It's God working in and through all of these things everywhere. And when we help people to really see that and be enthusiastic in our appreciation of the fact that these things are part of the whole, and show how what we're bringing will help to make that one living community, then it becomes much more valuable to them. And it would differ from place to place and person to person. But as the evangelists of this, we have to be all things to all people and be able to show them why and how this is for them. So you need to be a Greek to the Greek and a Roman to the Roman and a Jew to the Jew and all of that as the digital shepherd and the mentor.
Shepherd. Well, like I said, I can't. I mean, I've been to Parliament a few times. I've debated with the top church hierarchy, and I don't get any objections. I just don't get any action. I'd like what I did. You know what? The two most significant breakthroughs I've had have been around cybersecurity. Right? There is a one church group of 75 church leaders, and they've allowed me to be a part of that WhatsApp group, and they gave me an opportunity to present to them, and the feedback was excellent.
It's great.
But did they take action? No. Now, what actually happened was there was an incident. There was a cyber incident, a minor one, and they panicked. They panicked like hell. Get that digital shepherd in here. Let him tell us what the solution is. And I'm saying the solution is you need to be proactive. When somebody's telling you what you need to do, you need to listen. You can't recover from a GDPR incident. If they hit you with a GDPR fine, it's all over. Don't be calling me when ICO knock on your door and they say you are in breach of every regulation we have, sir, because I haven't got £17 million to bail you out. So I'm saying is that there is
it's never the fault of the customer. It's always the fault of the salesman.
Yeah. So no, as I said, I've been through some challenges, some real challenges, and I've had to pray to God and says, God,
that's great.
You know
what?
I've learned to be patient.
You got
I've
those challenges
so
because you're trying to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why you've had those challenges. And Nelson Mandela said, I either succeed or I learn. And so all you need to do is to go back in your closet with a pen and a piece of paper and go over them and say, okay, yeah, they were difficult, but where were the opportunities where I could have switched that conversation, where I could have made it into something that it was not, just like Jesus would do, He said, go get me a cup of water, but he's heading somewhere.
Dear, you know what?
that's the kind of, prayer works. If you sincerely start to ask God for the wisdom that you need to be able to succeed with some of these people that you're talking to, He will help you.
I sincerely hope. Well, I do pray, and I almost enjoy telling him about well, he knows anyway, but I think, God, this is what happened, like, because I thought the hardest thing would be to get to the top of the church height. It was the easiest thing to get to the top. God accelerated me all the way to the top,
There's a
only
secret.
to show me that the
There is a
solution.
secret. The Bible says the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord.
Okay.
So before you meet with any of those kings, and what's a king? A king is somebody whose word changes things. Where the word of the king is, there is power. And they have authority. No one, at least within their sphere, no one kind of can, well, people can question them, but only to an extent. And so that needs to be, rather, you need to turn this around and say, Lord, you own the heart of that king I'm going to visit. Give me the wisdom, create the connection spiritually, that when I step in there, their
With
hearts
your
will be
book,
open,
armed with your book of digital transformation.
that their heart will be open to me,
Yes.
and I will have the wisdom to communicate what you, Lord, have sent me with. Because it's got to be that God has sent you to that place on a mission, and you need to be able to come back to him and say, I did what you said, Lord, and it worked. Behold, demons were subject unto us.
Yeah. Listen, I could speak to you all evening, and I don't want to impose on whatever you have. I know we touched on the fact that at the heart of this solution is mentoring, and a mentor imparts wisdom. And as far as the Bible is concerned, there are some wisdom literature mainly attributable to Solomon in the form of and I asked you, what if you was to choose one line, one scripture, what would that be? And I think you gave me an answer, but let me just see if you've changed your mind.
I don't remember that conversation, but I think one, or if I could even make them two, there's two scriptures I would give you. One is that the Holy Spirit will teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance, whatsoever the Lord has said to you. And I believe that the you there is not just you, it's humanity. So whatever wisdom, whatever level of the person that you're speaking to about your mission to bring this digital idea to them, have a very firm belief, a faith that it is God who's going to speak through you. You're not going to do this talking when you get there. You're going to say, Holy Spirit, now speak through me. And because he also said, whenever you stand before the authorities, I will give you what you will say. You must not speak of yourself.
Yeah.
So those, if you put them together, I think would kind of fit with the conversation tonight.
Okay. And from the book, in terms of proverbs, that's probably what I did ask you. I think I asked you, what's your favorite or most used proverb that your go-to proverb?
Diligence in duty.
Okay.
Yeah,
Diligence in duty. Okay.
if you're diligent in your duty, the problem is a lot of people don't discover what the duty is. So they're very diligent, but they're not necessarily diligent in the duty that God has prescribed for them. Until you understand what is it that God really wants me to do, and you get diligent in that, then that proverb comes true for you.
And it's not one that I'm overly familiar with, actually. I thought I knew my proverbs. And so
Okay, so
let me
it's been an amazing time. I want to thank you for inviting me on, and hopefully look forward to being with you again sometime.
It's been my pleasure. It might have been spotless. Can I stop the crowd from giving you that round of applause? Those are my sentiments entirely. As I said,
It's for the Lord, not for me.
I can't think of a better person to kick off this series. As I say, we're going to be doing how do I's from here until we've run out of questions. You know, all my guests will come on, and whatever their speciality is, I invite them to finish the question, and then we will, you know, we will inform our audience on that particular expertise. But as I say, this one is very close to my heart. You've given me some nuggets there. I will be arming myself with your book, and I will be, my next visit to a church leader will be, I will be accompanied by your book, and maybe that will get me into places that I would otherwise not be able to get into. But I thank you very much for your time, sir. It's very much appreciated, and I look forward to ongoing dialogues when time, and letting you know how I get on. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. God bless you, and
Bless you too.
I will do my best to promote your book in over my channels as well, because
Thank you
I-
so
I've, I've,
much.
I've got a feeling that it's got some more nuggets in there that we didn't quite cover today, but that will be useful to me in my pursuits. So thank you very much. Have a good evening, and we'll catch up again soon. All right. God bless, sir.